Okay, with me now is the internationally renowned Judge Jules. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and join us. Now, I know that you've just been in London, you've just was in Ibiza, and now you're here in Mallorca, which is a feat in its own given the current environment we're in. So first I'm going to ask you, what was it like to travel London to Ibiza and then here to Mallorca, given the...
I've done it 6 times in the last 2 weeks.
You have?
So I'm definitely the person to ask.
Right, okay.
There's some of the privileges, dare I say, that you get as a frequent flyer have been forsaken by the airlines in the name of social distancing. So you can't be a priority boarder, for example, on EasyJet, or if you've got a BA frequent flyer, you can't board first. The theory being that they want to board the plane by seat row number. I'm not necessarily sure that I agree with the logic of any of that, because it just needs to be done sensibly. But anyway, that's one of the things. Everybody's wearing masks on the plane and in the airport, of course, which seems pretty obvious, spoken about from the perspective of the Baleares, where we've got this let's wear masks everywhere rule, which is a bit questionable, but that's another story. But in the UK, it's not mandatory to wear masks inside buildings, with the exception of shops. That comes in imminently, but it is under the rules of each airport, you do have to wear a mask. So that seems a bit stranger if you're British than it would if you were based over here, where you're more used to it. Yeah. As far as the airlines are concerned, there's a bit more limited food and beverages, but it's not too dissimilar an experience. I mean, I think that you're facing forwards, you're masked up. You are given on British Airways some hand sanitizer, on other airlines not. I'm certainly not travelling in fear. I think people need to be cautious about coronavirus. I'd be silly to say otherwise, but I think the degree of fear that has been generated by certainly the UK government and apparently by the Spanish government as well is probably almost taking it to an extreme, just to make those people who would otherwise not pay any attention whatsoever pay some attention. But yes. Actually, it's forced certain people to be really fearful of flying, and I'm not one of those people. I've looked into the facts a little bit deeper where COVID-19 is concerned, rather than simply absorbing what the media tells me I should believe.
Yes. I'm not going to document your DJ past, because that's well documented. So what I want to talk about is your current DJing status. Now, obviously, you've had, I would imagine, I'm assuming, which I shouldn't do, that you've had a lot of your DJ bookings for this year changed and moved. Can you tell us a little bit like that? And also, if there's any bookings that haven't been moved, or any countries that are still going with it?
Well, the majority of my gigs are UK, holiday, plus sort of Mediterranean holiday resorts, and then I'll go to the likes of Dubai, the US and Australia. But I do, as opposed to sort of 10 or 15 years ago, where I did a portfolio of countries around the world constantly in an almost non-stop tour. Now, because it's more UK based, there aren't many other countries that I could be going to because their doors are open. I mean, anecdotally, I've been told that 1 or 2 things in Croatia and 1 or 2 things in Serbia are happening, but I speak to lots of other DJs, and in my legal practice I represent a lot of other people, and I don't think many people are working, even those whose kind of diary is filled every week with a different country. Yeah. Yes, this was due to be my busiest year of DJing in at least a decade. Last year I did 100 gigs. This year was due to be probably at least 10 or 15% more than that. I've lost most of them, haven't DJed since mid-March. I do have certain things coming up which theoretically are going to happen. I've got some car raves, I've got some socially distanced festivals, doing a couple of private events. So it's not like I'm completely out of the picture, but it's been culturally for me, as somebody who is very used to going out every Saturday night, and dare I say it, quite uncomfortable with watching Strictly Come Dancing or whatever normal people do on Saturday night. Yes. Financially, of course, very damaging. I guess the only caveat to that is that I've been live streaming DJ sets every Saturday night from the beginning of April onwards. They've got amazing stats. I've probably had about at least 3 million views of my live streams, if not a bit more than that now. So okay. I've been very pleased about that.
How have you got around the copyright to do like a Facebook Live?
Well, Facebook Live, basically I do it on Facebook Live, Twitch and YouTube. YouTube is fine. Twitch is just about fine. Facebook, occasionally one gets taken down, you put yourself straight back up.
Right, okay.
Is what one does. Facebook launched Facebook Live in a blaze of flashing glory, but didn't necessarily clear the rights for doing this sort of stuff as well
Right.
as other digital portals did. But so it's not been a money maker for me, but it's been a sort of keep yourself out there in the public eye. It's been a branding
Yes.
exercise, and it's been very successful.
When you're not doing the DJing, for some people it's a rumour. Oh, I've heard he's doing this. For some people, actually do know it. You are actually still practicing law, which is where obviously the DJ name originally came from. But do you have your own law practice, or are you working with a law practice at the moment?
I work in a law practice, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's actually not correct that I've always been a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for the last... I got a law degree when I was 21. I didn't immediately become a lawyer.
Right,
I decided to do this about 12 years ago, qualified nearer to 10 years ago, and have been practicing not only in the dance music fraternity, but obviously a substantial proportion of the people I represent are dance music artists, plus urban and pop. That's kind of the genre that I'm in.
Okay.
I think for the house fraternity, I mean, I'm probably now the busiest lawyer probably in the world, specialising really in dance music. I've got a huge practice, and I clearly with my commercial background, having not just been a DJ, but having been on Radio 1, having set up labels, been an artist, kind of done all the stuff that I'm now, from a practical perspective, that I'm now advising about from a legal perspective. So it sort of puts me in a market of one, really, i.e. an active artist and somebody who is a lawyer at the same time. It should be stressed, I'm a music lawyer, music and entertainment lawyer. Whilst in theory I could handle other stuff, it's not what I do. Don't ask me to buy or sell your house or defend you if you get banged up in the middle of the night.
Yes, but what about if you're a DJ or a musician? Then they still need to call somebody else in the firm. So what sort of things do you take care of? Like, what is the, for say young budding artists or DJs that are producing records that maybe are being approached by a record company as we speak? What are the do's and don'ts, or things that you would say watch out for, maybe?
Well, it's difficult. Most people who have been making tracks in their bedroom, which whether you're in a band or you're making electronic music is ultimately where you're likely to have started, see getting a record deal as an achievement in its own right. But actually, I think it's important to realise that's the first in a number of stepping stones that one needs to take. And because they sometimes quite unrealistically consider that to be a very significant achievement, they just sign anything that gets put in front of them. So my job is to negotiate the deal terms, and then to kind of redraft and shape contracts back into a position where the artist is far less prejudiced by signing these agreements. And the music business there are some great people in it. I've been in it all my life, over 30 years, but there are plenty of contracts out there that will really catch the unawares in a very negative manner, and my job is to stop that happening. So for me, not only do I understand the legal side of it, and I represent some labels, so I can also draft these things as opposed to simply amending other record labels' contracts, but having experienced the pitfalls firsthand, and having experienced some of the negative characters in the music business, I'm very well qualified to if you like, step in and steer the deal in the right direction very fast.
Is there one particular label that you would perhaps steer artists away from?
There are a few, but I don't think I would necessarily mention them now. I would mention them privately to other lawyers, or I might mention them to my clients. I think it would be risky for me to start sort of naming and shaming at this point, but there are a few that whose contracts I don't just find professionally unappealing. I'm almost quite disgusted by some of the contracts I see. Because
on the other side of the scale, though, are there some record companies that you would name that you would say are particularly great? So, like, if you get approached by these guys, they're the kind of great guys to be approached by.
I think it's not just in the contracts. It's also in the people who work for the labels. Because you need to, if you're signed to a bigger label, you need to have buy-in within the building, as we say. So if you're in a label it's a fully staffed record label, it's got a marketing department, it's got an A&R team, it's got a business affairs team, it's got a video team. You need, as an artist, to have pretty much all of those people buying into what you do, because if they do, then you're going to get supported internally within that record company so much better than simply being some random artist who might have had some money paid for their services and might be making music but hasn't necessarily got a sense of belonging amongst the people within the record label.
Do you think that that's a good step and a necessary step, or do you think that there should still be a divide between producer and DJ?
Well, you're right. I started prior to producing records, but then subsequently I've probably released about 200 records. But I think I have needed to do that. The reality is, it's your calling card, especially in the COVID era where people aren't able to go out and tout their services live. You need something to demonstrate your wares to the rest of the world.
Yes.
Now, of course, in the Spotify era, I mean, depending on who you believe, there's anywhere between 10,000 and 100,000 new releases per week. So it's a daunting task trying to make your music stand out in a crowd. And you can't simply put it up there, release it and think that's good enough, because it'll just get lost. It will be tomorrow's, today's news, tomorrow's chip paper, if you like.
Yeah.
So you need to be with either a label who is very capable of marketing what you do and getting tastemakers, be it radio, be it Spotify playlists, be it kind of journalists, to pay attention. Or if you are good at doing that yourself, and certain artists are, creating a kind of DIY bubble around yourself, then that's equally good. And in fact, if you are capable of doing it yourself, that puts you at a particular advantage. Because you know exactly what's being done on your behalf. You're not relying on other people's promises. But one way or the other, there is an awful lot of spade work to do, and actually an awful lot of grind and an awful lot of repeatedly releasing good records. You'd be very lucky if you put your first record out and you were an overnight sensation. In fact, that would probably be a negative thing, because you wouldn't have enough time to build a fan base. More commonplace, both in electronic music and pop and rock and all spheres of music, is that slow burn. You slowly build layers of fan base. You start in your local area, in your local social circle. You then maybe grow to a broader geographical base. You keep going, maybe you release records, suddenly you get pockets of fan base in other parts of the world. And that kind of growth trajectory is the typical story of most music artists. So it won't happen overnight, but you've got to and you've got to be realistic about it and set your expectations accordingly, and try and but as long as you are continuing on that growth trajectory over a period of months and years, and you can see where you're going, you can see what your sort of objectives are on a biannual / annual basis, and hopefully you will fulfill them. There's an element of luck inevitably in any kind of creative industry, then hopefully you will succeed.
Do you think that the market is still there to be able to become a DJ without producing a record?
I think it's very difficult to succeed as a DJ without producing records. I mean, there might be one or two exclusions. I think even radio, dare I say it. I mean, I was lucky in that I came from multiple routes into my career. One was raves, so I was very, very big in the acid house rave era and the sort of early 90s super club era. 2 was radio and Radio 1. And 3 was making music. I mean, I suppose, and 4 was Ibiza, in the absolute heyday of Ibiza. It's not.
Yeah, so I understand what you mean. Yeah,
particularly strong period of Ibiza. So for me, there were different strands to my career, of which music making was one. I think arguably, if you were a radio presenter on a very successful station, maybe you could do it without making music. But I don't think it's easy. I think that's how you are almost judged. On the quality of your music productions over and above the quality of your DJ sets.
And do you agree with that? Do you think that's a good thing, or?
I'm on the shelf. It is what it is. I'm not going to change it, so there's no point really getting too het up about it.
You've mentioned that the one thing during this COVID time as well is that instead of going out DJing, you've called things like Strictly. So I am going to say, have you found in this time that you found yourself a bit of a guilty pleasure?
I haven't been watching Strictly at this point. I never would. I don't think. If I'm not mistaken, it hasn't even been on. I don't know. Yeah. No, I don't. I'm not. I've watched a few more Netflix things.
Okay, yeah. And do you have like a one that's particularly stood out for you? Yeah. Even a movie, perhaps. I
haven't really watched. No, I've watched some box sets which I haven't. I'm probably a bit behind the curve on Netflix box sets before now. Now, okay. Fauda, F-A-U-D-A, which is an Israeli drama about the Secret Service. The best thing I've watched by far. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you for coming in today. Thank you very much. And that's it from Judge Jules, ladies and gentlemen.